Alright, good day everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of the Vise Squad, brought to you by Togens Fly Shop and Dr. Slick Tools. This week, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to tie this in two segments. So we'll do the part of it this week and part of it next week, and we'll get into that a little bit more a little later on. This week, definitely something a little more different than last week with the brassy. That was a very, very simple fly. But this week is the Muddler Minnow. And not totally traditional, but I'll explain that as we go along. So what I'm going to do today is we're going to get it to this point, where we have the tail, the body, the underwing, and the wing in, and then we're going to leave that there. And then next week we'll go ahead and we'll tie the the collar and the head in. So what we're going to use to tie this is a number 6 streamer hook. It's a 4 extra long streamer hook from Togens. Pardon me. And we're going to use some 70 denier Black UTC. And I'm going to start that well down the hook, just ahead of the point. And I'm going to wind that just to where the bend is. And then we're going to snip our tag out. Like so. And the first material we're going to use are some turkey quills, which look like this. And we're going to cut those with a razor blade. So I've bought razor blades, like the old school razor blades. And what I've done is I've bent that and snapped it in half. And to cut the piece of quill out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run that razor blade right along, hopefully you can see that, right along the stem. And on these razor blades is little grooves and indents and whatnot. And that's what I'm going to use to measure how far I'm going to cut it. So, for instance, on this one, my tail, I like to cut to these grooves here. And for my wing, I like to make it the whole width of the razor blade. So if I wanted something smaller, I could use this as a point of reference here. Maybe this one's a little bit different than this one, so on and so forth. So anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that razor blade and I'm going to trim one piece off, one quill. That looks like that. Now, these quills usually come in matched pairs, so there'd be a left and a right. So we're going to take and strip the same width off the other side. I'll show you why in a second here. So we'll trim that out. Now what you're going to end up with is two quills that they'll turn the opposite way, sorry, if you put the shiny side or the outside of the feather to each other. Now what I like to do with these Muddler Minnows on the tail is I like to take one where that natural curl is pointed up. I've got a bit of a wonky feather there. And then I like to take the other one and point it down. And then what you're going to get, if I can get them lined up here, is something that resembles a tail. So what we'll do, now that I've got these orientated the right way, I'm going to kind of hold them right on top of that hook. And we'll make it, I don't know, maybe however long you want it. They don't want to be way out here. Maybe half an inch past the bend of the hook. So I'll hold it where I want it here. I'm going to grab it with my other hand. I'm going to grab that thread and do a pinching wrap. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep holding with my left hand on the tips of the tail, and I'm going to make sure that those don't crush with the weight of the thread. But what I want to do is crush here. And it'll just, with the weight of your bobbin, it'll settle down like that. And then I'm just going to put an extra wrap in just to sort of secure it, and I'm going to switch hands again. And then you'll see, hopefully, if you've done it okay and you've held them nice and tight, they won't just completely crush. This isn't the easiest thing to do. I'm not very good at it. I won't even lie about it. It's a skill that comes with time and practice, and these aren't something I tie a whole bunch of, but I do enjoy tying them. So what I'm going to do then is, just to help sort of build my body up, I'm going to spin my thread around. The butts of those feathers until I get to my point where I want to stop. Now, to measure this fly out for your proportions, I want the body to be about 2/3 of the hook shank, and the head and collar will be the front third. So more or less I'm going to tie these butts in that length of the 2/3, if you will. I'll run my thread back to the back end. And I'm going to grab my scissors, if I can find them here. And there. And I'm going to trim those out. We'll come back up and clean all this up after. As long as you've got them mostly out of your way, you're probably good. All right, so next what I'm going to grab is a piece of medium red ultra wire. And I'm going to tie that in on the far side of the hook. Put a couple loose wraps to get it started. I'll kind of pull it back just so I'm not extending much past my body here. And then we'll just tie that in all the way up, and that's just going to help keep a nice uniform shape on the body. And we'll wind her back down. The next material is going to be some medium, I think this stuff is gold hollow tinsel. And I've peeled off about, I don't know, 8 or 10 inches here. And I'm going to tie that in on my side. Again, just try and keep it on the side. Just like this stuff's pretty thin, it's probably not going to do much to the shape of your body, but why not put it where it belongs? And then what I like to do is just sort of smooth it all out. Make sure you don't got any big high spots or big low spots. And we'll leave that thread at the front. Next I'll take that hollow tinsel and we're just going to do some slightly overlapping wraps, so we don't see our thread. Try not to, this stuff is slippery. If you've never worked with it before, it can be a little bit frustrating, especially if you let it go and it unravels all and you get to start all over again. When we get to the front, we'll tie it off. Snip the rest out. Next we'll go back to that red wire and we're going to counter wrap that. So we'll wrap towards you. You can make the spacing as big as you want or as small as you want. I like to go about 1/16 of an inch. This kind of looks nice. We'll get to the front and we'll just tie that off. And helicopter it out of there. A little stubborn. There we go. All right. So now I'm just going to build a little bit of a thread base here for our next material to sit on, which is Squirrel Tail, and which is also a very waxy and slippery hair to tie with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some cobbler's wax, and I'm going to just put a little bit on my thread, and I'm going to put that cobbler's wax on my thread base here, and that should help the squirrel stop from spinning around the hook, which it has a tendency to do. Which will take our squirrel here now. You don't need a huge underwing on this fly. You probably need just a, I don't even know how to say it, just a little pinch. You don't need much. I'm using that much. So we'll grab the tips with your left hand and just clean out the little under hairs that just have some fines and stuff in it. As long as you're more or less sort of stacked up even on the end, you're good. So we'll lay that down, and I'm going to put that just kind of just past the bend of the hook, and we'll just do a nice pinching wrap. And do some nice tight turns on there, and that wax should stop it from sliding around. And once you're fairly certain that it's pretty secure, and just snip the butts out. And we'll just lay some thread wraps over top of that. Clean it up a little bit. All right, so that's your underwing. Now if your underwing lays really, really flat, you can go in and put some thread wraps underneath, like that. This one's splayed up pretty good because it hit the wire just right. So I'm pretty happy with that. All right, next for the wing, we're gonna go back to those turkey quills, and we're gonna do the same thing as we did with the tail. And like I said, I'm gonna use the wider, or the widest point on this. Seems to be a pretty good size for these muddlers. And one side. We'll trim the next. It does help if you use a very, very sharp razor blade. Just past experience. If your blade's getting a bit dull, you can end up just sort of pushing through these feathers, and it just kind of wrecks the ends of them. They don't cut very nicely, and then in the end, they just don't tie in very nice. Now on these ones, you can tie them in the same as we did here, where you've got them opposite. Traditionally, you would tie this in so that they're both pointing down, and because of the way that these are splayed, they'll splay out like that, which is the way that we'll tie these in today. But I do tie them in both ways, depending on how I'm feeling that day. All right, so we're gonna extend that wing just beyond the underwing. So it'll kind of be sort of between the underwing and the end of the tail. Close as you can anyway. And again, once you grab these with your non-dominant hand, you really want to hang on to them so that they don't fold on you. But you can let the thread go and just sort of let it work its way down and get all those bits of feathers sort of stacked down on each other. And we can have a look if you cross over. You don't get a true example of it until you really get it tied in, but those look pretty okay, I think. And we'll just keep holding on to them real tight. And put nice thread wraps in there, like that. Let's see, that came out not too bad. Next, we'll just leave our thread up towards with the wing there, and then we'll trim these butts out. Like so. You don't want to leave a whole bunch of bulk up here if you don't have to, just because we're going to spin some hair on it. Clean that up. Now, because I'm going to tie this in 2 parts, for today I'm going to whip finish this off here, and then on the next time we'll tie the collar in and do the head, and then I'll show you how to trim the head up and sort of the easier ways that I found to do that. But like I said, for today we'll just whip finish this off, and we'll leave it at that. So other than, I think, tying in the feather wings, I think everything else is pretty straightforward on these bodies. I think they're actually not terribly difficult to tie. It's just getting used to these feather wings. And I blew through a pile of quills when I was really first starting to attempt these flies and kind of get the hang of them. And I still go through them. I don't profess to be an expert at tying these things, because they can be humbling and fairly frustrating. I guess it is good to note too that these flats are only a number 2 grade, so they're not super symmetrical. If you want to, I mean, the better feathers you buy, these are just kind of tough to find up here. I don't find them very often, and when I do, it's never really the top end stuff. So, but anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it so far, and I hope you tune in next week. When we get the collar done and we get the head all trimmed up and whatnot. Until then, please go give our sponsors a look. Give them a thumbs up, give them a like, give them a follow on Instagram, Facebook. Check out their websites, and that's Togens Fly Shop and Dr. Slick Tools. And thanks to Rick, as always, who does such a good job for us, keeping us motivated and editing our videos and all the other hard work that he does with the store and whatnot. So until next week, thanks.